Hello everyone. Today we're going to be talking about agile methodology. So the idea and the focus is going to be primarily from a standpoint of execution. All right, let's jump into it. A small introduction about me. I've been with Wipro, Merrill, Wiley Online Library, Altimetric, Allstate Insurance, Rappo, and right now I'm CPO at PureSilver.io. Okay, that's me. So it all starts with the waterfall methodology, which we have been using it for ages altogether. There are reasons where we use waterfall, and then there are other reasons where we start feeling that things are not going well with the waterfall model. So some of the major reasons why the waterfall is not so good, we will talk through those. So if you actually start from the very beginning, it's sort of a linear process. It all starts with having your requirements done first, then design. After design, you like to implement it, then review, and then after that things are not okay again, you go back, redo the entire requirement all over again. So this kind of a process takes kind of a year or so, and it doesn't allow any kind of change request, any changes that has to be done. If at all there is a change that has to be accepted, it will take maybe over a year or so. I mean, at least a month or so. Coming back to some of the limitations of using a waterfall. So, for example, with respect to change management complexity, taking in any kind of change request goes through some kind of a formal request that goes through a number of approval processes. There needs to be done impact assessment with each change request that is coming in. Is it really worthwhile for us to be making those changes? Because every other change that we are actually talking about leads to design changes, and that again leads to your development changes. Next, from a standpoint of requirement, ideally when it comes to the waterfall model, there is this requirement freeze that happens. We don't want to make any changes after requirement freeze is done. Anything beyond that is like a scope creep, which is not well accepted. And then on the other hand, there can also be changes which are like uncontrolled. There can be changes which are actually coming from the may have seen certain things, may have noticed certain things, and based on that they would like to now make changes. When they start noticing, when they start viewing, visualizing how the product is turning out to be, how the project is turning out to be, at that point of time they want to make certain changes. Next, limited customer involvement. So there are only two instances where actually the customer is involved when it comes to the waterfall. So one, when actually you're actually starting off for the very first time, you want to gather requirement from them. So at that point of time, you're actually involved. So it could be as though, like, maybe for 3 months they give you all the requirement dump that is possible, and then during the next stages they are not at all involved, and finally when you are actually ready with the product, as a big bank we show the product to the customer, and then they get to see whether it has met their expectation, has not met their expectation. So the testing happens very late in the game, maybe after a year, maybe in some cases maybe more than that. um, Next, lack of iterations. There are no iterations whatsoever. There are fixed project plans, and plan timelines have to be met no matter what. Whatever. So the project manager will work towards ensuring that resources are upping their game, and ensuring that the execution is happening based on what was discussed, what was planned. And then big bang delivery, which we were just talking about. In one go the entire delivery happens. It leads to a situation where we end up building up, there's a possibility we might just build a product which might maybe not meet their expectation, or it's not meeting as a customer satisfaction. The customer satisfaction is kind of low, and there are other instances where we are not having the necessary compliance related aspects taken care of. And last but not the least, it's more of a revenue delays. If in case we are not able to meet the timelines, it hits the revenue of the company. Sequential phasing is again a thing where you if in case you are revisiting the requirements, the whole cycle with respect to the linear process restarts all over again. So what really happens over here is you again go back to the requirement, you go back to the design, relook at for this new requirement what kind of design changes will have to be done, what kind of backend changes will have to be done again from design. Then we go back to development, and then back back. So it has like stringent linear element involved over here. Documentation overheads. With respect to the waterfall, it goes heavy with requirement documentation. It goes heavy with high level design documentation, low level design documentation. You want to know exactly what you're going to be going after. Not that waterfall is totally bad, it has been working all these years, but it's just that depending upon the kind of requirement, depending upon the kind of product that you want to be building, accordingly you should be in a position to choose whether you should want to be going with a waterfall or agile. Agile may not be applicable for all the engagements. There may be instances where even waterfall may make more sense, right? So before agile actually came into picture, there were other precursors which actually came into effect, like rapid application development, RAD, that we call. This is a case where we are doing time boxing and we are doing workshops. We want to build applications as soon as possible. Then there are other two, like spiral model, where we focus on risk analysis and then focus on prototype delivery. And in the third case is the evolutionary prototyping, where we focus primarily from a standpoint of feature, where we do feature additions, and finally what we do is we do a final product completion, right? So we go into agile methodology now. We'll try to understand agile a little deeper, understand what it means. Primarily agile is something which is iterative, flexible, and it is customer centric approach to project management. So it originates from software development. It has expanded to various industries. Unlike the traditional methodologies like waterfall, it emphasizes on adaptability, collaboration, and delivering small and functional increments of a product over a rigid sequential phases. Right? We'll talk more about it. So it all starts with 1990s, where we found that the documentations uh, were taking a lot of time, and we were also building software a lot longer. And there were 17 individuals, you can say developers. They came together in 2001, and they formulated what they were thinking of as the agility to building the product. So the Agile Manifesto was created in Feb 2001, and it primarily focused on breaking the project into manageable cycles, like sprint we can call, and then deliver functional outputs frequently, like every 2 weeks, or it could be in some cases even 4 weeks. And it's refined for the real world. It could also be used for different other functions, like maybe for HR, maybe for marketing, for anything per se, right? And today what we see is the agile adoption, which used to be like 37% in 2010. It's now in fact more than like 80%. All right. So what are the major values of agile? The major values are this teamwork and communication, functional software, customer partnership, and adaptability to change. So, what do we mean by teamwork and the communication? We are giving more importance to collaboration. We're giving importance to communication within the team. It's important from an agile standpoint that we don't want to we want to be too stringent with the processes. We don't want to waste our time in getting approvals. We don't want to waste our time in being too focused on process, but rather what we want to ensure is all the necessary individuals who are supposed to be working on this engagement should be available and should be in a position to be communicating effectively. If needed, there should be something like a war room where everybody is sitting together and working on the same common problem. Number two, functional software. Delivering software that meets the user needs effectively. So we don't want to be delivering unnecessary software as well. We want to build something like a MVP, which exactly meets the user needs as early as possible. So there are stage by stage, design thinking you could use, or maybe another effective brainstorming, effective tools you could use to ensure that you're building the right set of features for your product. Next, customer partnership. The focus here is primarily building strong partnerships with the customer. We want them to be part of the team. We don't want them to be outside the team, where they are getting to know updates at on later date, rather they are not involved. So intention, as part of the agile values, is they have to be part of the team, so that when the decisions are made, they are involved. When deliveries are happening, they are informed. And when any changes have to be done, they are aware of what's really happening with the product at this point of time. Then adaptability to change. We are embracing the change. We want to ensure that changes are accepted immediately. We are able to make a judgment of how important those changes are. The changes could be anything. Changes could be more from a standpoint of, maybe it's product goal oriented. It could be to do with maybe a bug, or something that your competition has seen is doing right now, and your product doesn't have that kind of a feature. It could lead to maybe a revenue impact. So what, as a company, we would like to do? Would you like to make those changes immediately, or we like to keep it later? And if we do it later, we will miss out on those revenues. We will start seeing the user churns happening more. So how can we ensure that adaptability to change can be more effective over here, right? So these are the four major core values of agile that leads to agile effectiveness, right? Next, we're going to be talking about this in detail: individuals and interactions over process and tools. This is the first major value of agile. Here, we are primarily trying to focus on people over procedures. And intent is, for example, you can consider a team resolves a coding issue in a 10 minutes discussion instead of 2 day email chain, where we are discussing, do we have the permission to actually do this? Whose approval do we need? Can we do this now or not? In order to make this change, we need a designer, and designer is not part of the team. We will have to wait for the designer to get allocated, and approvals have to be taken, and then move forward. So which an activity as simple as which could take maybe 10 minutes can take not just 2 days, could take much more, right? The second example could be, instead of relying solely on requirement document, the business analyst actively collaborates with the business, with the development team, answering questions, clarifying ambiguities, and providing real-time feedback. So we can have daily stand-up meetings where the business analyst is not just checking on what is really going on, but in fact trying to ensure that there are no bottlenecks for the development team, and they're ensuring the requirement as they should. They're developing the right set of requirements. They are not making wrong assumptions and building something which the business analyst has not spoken of, right? So by having these face-to-face communication, we have found that over 25% we are able to solve the problem better, faster, right? What are the practical implication, if you want to know? We have a better team composition. We emphasize primarily on cross-functional team. What it basically means is the team is formed with diverse skills. Something like, we have engineering team which is primarily doing the development. There is designers who are maybe focusing on UI UX. You have business analyst or a product owner who is ensuring that he is the voice of the customer. He is someone who understands what the stakeholders, what the customer, what the subject matter experts are talking about, are suggesting, are things that are being called as like pain points and the needs. So he understands those, and he is transition and providing that information. And then you basically want to ensure that your cross-functional team is intact. It's you don't have to be dependent on any external team per se to move to achieve your goals. Next is the communication channels. You want to ensure that you encourage primarily informal communication channels, and you want to reduce the formal documentation. We don't want, not that we don't want to do documentation, it's just that we are have not overly relying on a formal set of documentation. And finally, you have a better decision making. You're empowering the team. You want to ensure that the team is able to make better decisions. They are empowered to ensure that, be it from a solution standpoint or maybe from the requirement standpoint, they have been given the necessary information based on which they're able to make those calls. Training and development. We're investing into the team to ensure that they are upping their game. They have the right skills in order to build the product. Next, we are talking about working software over comprehensive documentation. Like we just spoke of earlier, we don't want to be building excessive documentation. Rather, we want to build the necessary set of features like acceptance criteria, a definition of done, which could be enough to build a product. Example could be like a startup releasing a basic app in 6 weeks with minimal documents. Right, we iterate based on like 1,000 user reviews versus 6 months of planning. So we don't want to spend too much time on planning, but we want to focus on building the product, take this product to the market, try to get as much reviews as possible. The second example could be, instead of creating a detailed design document upfront, we want the team to focus on writing clean and well documented code along with unit tests that serve the executable specification. So as you can actually see over here, basically what we're talking about is focus should ideally be on execution, ensuring that the team is ready to go, is able to build code for based on minimal set of documentation, right? Based on the data, what we have noticed, there are agile teams, they are able to produce 30% less documentation, but they are able to have 20% more usable output, right? And from a standpoint of practical implication, we are able to prioritize the development of working software over creating extensive documentation. So we save a whole lot of time from doing extensive documentation, extensive documentation, which could take between 3 to 6 months, which we are able to nullify immediately now, and we are primarily able to focus on just the execution. Documentation could just the enough documentation should just do the job. And automated documentation, we may use the necessary automated tools, just to so that we are able to generate documentation for the code and the test. Right. So number 3 focuses on customer collaboration over contract negotiation. So you engage with customers throughout to align with their evolving needs and not just initial contracts. Or rather the agreements. So what really happens over here is, though we build the agreements, we want them to be working not as a relationship between one who is signing contract, but rather a relationship between someone who is involved together. So involved in building the product. So examples, if you could just talk this through, weekly demos, adjust a product based on 80% of the customer approval versus a fixed contract missing 50% of the preferences. So if there is a fixed contract, there are cases where we are not able to meet the user preferences. But if we have those weekly demos, we are able to ensure that during the reviews, we're able to build a better usable and of value product, which will have a better customer approval. And the other example is that a product owner primarily works very, very closely with the customer, by which we are able to define user stories, better user stories, and we are able to define the acceptance criteria, which is pertinent to what they are actually looking for. And along with that, we are able to prioritize their product backlog based on the most urgent needs, based on what matters the most for the user, and finally get it delivered as soon as possible. Um, if you look at the data, we found that 70% of the agile projects they meet customer expectations compared to 45% in waterfall model. And if you look from an implication standpoint, by having customer involvement, it has been found that the when the customers are actually involved, the throughput of the development process is much better, and we keep seeking the feedback on a regular basis. There is this collaborative requirement gathering also, which is actually happening. We keep working with our customers, due to which we are able to have user story workshops. We are able to prototype, and we are able to gather requirement more effectively. We have frequent demos which may happen on a weekly basis or a bi-monthly basis. During this time, we are able to demonstrate to the customer what has been built so far, and if any changes have to be done, we get their feedback and work on them based on priority. And we adopt flexible contracts. Basically, we adopt a flexible contract which allows us to for changes to the scope and the requirement of the project. Right. And the fourth would be a customer collaboration over contract negotiation. So the focus here is to responding to change. So let's take an example. Let's say a team pivots to a fitness app to add stress tracking after 60% user demand spike in 2 weeks. The other example could be like when when the customer requests for a new feature in the middle of a sprint, the team assesses the impact of the change and adjusts the sprint backlog accordingly. So, as we spoke earlier, we are not primarily too strong. We go too strong with respect to rejecting the change request, but rather we try to do analysis, try understanding if how important it is for this user to actually have these requirement. How will this really solve their problem or not? If it is impactful, if it is of value, then we like to prioritize it as part of our sprint backlog. What we have seen is, as part of the data, that agile projects they accommodate 50% more stage changes. From an implication standpoint, there is we adopt a iterative planning approach. We are able to plan for the next iteration. We have a flexible scope which allows us to for accepting changes to the requirement. We are able to have better priorities. We are able to have priorities based on what customers really want. Customers start noticing how the product is evolving. They start visualizing it, and when that happens, then we actually end up with better user feedback, and so that allows us to ensure that we are able to take those feedbacks more proactively now, and we are able to respond to these changes better. Retrospectively, we are also able to conduct regular retrospectives. We are able to identify what's working, what's not working, and areas of improvement. Accordingly, we are able to adjust our process better. Agile has got like 12 principles. We'll just go after each of them. Customer satisfaction through early and continuous delivery. So we focus here on early customer delivery. So you can take an example of like an MVP. By launching an MVP as soon as possible, we are able to ensure that we are able to meet the customer satisfaction way early in the game. We are able to achieve better satisfaction. We are able to learn if this product is really going to work or not. If it is not going to happen, we make changes based on the feedback that we are getting from the customer, and we ensure that we want to go towards achieving more or other satisfaction, whether they like the product or not, whether it is meeting their needs or not. Welcoming change requirements. So responding to change, ideally, if there are any change requests that are happening early in the game or during the mid project, we're able to respond to them. Frequent delivery of working software. We focus here on primarily on the CI/CD. We want to release the code on as early as possible and as frequently as possible as well. So it could be in some cases like an extreme programming could be like a weekly basis. Those releases could happen, or it could happen even bi-weekly. Right. Next, close and daily cooperation between the business and the developers. So what happens here is we would want to have certain ceremonies such that we are involving the business on a daily basis. We want to inform them what's going on, what are the, what's changed in like a last one day, and what's working, what's not working, what uh, what's happened so far. And this kind of ensures that there's no miscommunication. Should not be having any kind of surprises. Then projects which are built around motivated individuals. We don't want to have a master slave kind of a situation. We want to empower our team to make the decision. They should be in a position to self organize themselves. By doing this, we are able to boost our output by in fact 20%. So idea is not to do micromanagement where there's a project manager and who's assigning the task, but rather giving the flexibility to the team, this agile team, to make the decisions, to pick the work task on their own and achieve the goals. Next, face-to-face conversation as the best communication. So trying to ensure that everybody is on the page, they're working together, they are in some kind of a war room. And by doing this, we are able to cut down on the process. We are able to cut down on email conversation. And there is the focus more is more on ensuring that collaboration is there, and they're able to get the execution done faster. Next, working software as the primary measure of progress. So idea here is to get the working software as soon as possible in the hands of the customer. Not the working documentation or the documentation documents, complete documentation, but rather a working software altogether. So focus on getting the MVP, and then follow that by keep working on the sprints to get or release those milestones. Next, we focus on the sustainable development pace. Like that could be like 40 a week, ensuring that there are no burnouts, understanding what kind of capacity that the team has, and accordingly makes the necessary adjustments. Next, we'll talk about the continuous attention to technical excellence. Try to refactor the code weekly. So what happens is there are while we are actually building the code, there are cases where we may build the code which may not be adhering to the coding standards. When that happens, we would also want to allocate time for refactoring the code on a weekly basis. There may be also instances where our pile of bugs might also be increasing. So we want to ensure that even the bug list is not just growing. We're cutting down on the bug count as well. Next is the simplicity. The intent here being that we want to maximize on work which is not done. We want to skip the low level value features. We want to prioritize it based on the effort and the impact. What kind of impact these set of features are actually able to make to the user? Are we able to deliver a high value product to the consumer? And in order to do that, we do those prioritizations to our product backlog, try to pick those stories, add to the something like a sprint backlog, and then ensure that we build the right features. Next is the self-organizing team. There could be like a small team, like maybe a 7-member team or a 5-member, or maybe in fact even 4-member team, which might be there, which might split their work based on their capabilities. They might pick the stories based on their capabilities. There may be instances where there may be new members who might actually be coming in, and intent here should be how well they are able to get absorbed in the team, what kind of support they are actually getting within the team. Last being regular reflections and adaptations. There should be something like a post sprint retrospective ceremony which could happen depending upon the length of your sprint. So sprint could be for 2 week. If it is a 2 week, then you have a post sprint retrospective which happens every 2 weeks, where you we look at what's worked internally for the team, what's not working, what improvements could be there. By doing this, we're able to increase our velocity significantly. It is boosting our efficiency. What's We try to learn what's not been working for the team, and we start improving those. So there are different types of agile framework. Um, we're listing it out over here. So one is agile Scrum methodology, scaled agile framework, which is at the enterprise level. Third is the lean software development. Fourth is Kanban. Fifth is extreme programming. Sixth is crystal methodology. Seventh is dynamic system development method. Eighth is the feature driven development. So part of this presentation, we will primarily be focusing on agile Scrum methodology. We'll look at SAFe, we'll look at Lean, Kanban, and XP. The rest of them are not used much. You can check them out later. Right. So, doing a deep dive into Scrum primarily breaks down the work into time box cycles, which are called like sprints. So, like you can imagine that when you see an Olympics game where athletes are in a relay, so the baton is passed from one sprint to the other. So similar to that, the sprints are. So sprints are a fixed cycle. It could be 2 week cycle, or it could be a 4 week cycle. There are defined roles and there are defined ceremonies as part of the Scrum. The first one being the product owner, who's responsible for the defining what is the vision. With the vision comes the product goals, and then what's the most important pressing value that we would need to be building. So with that comes the backlog. So there's a backlog which the product owner builds. This backlog has all the necessary set of user stories, which we will also look at. These user stories have to be prioritized based on the maximum customer value that we are trying to provide. So you also want to ensure that when the product is being built, it's supposed to be functional, sprint by sprint by sprint. Right. To give an example, we don't want to be delivering a product which is incomplete, or rather certain features. Let's say we worked on 10 different features at the same time, and by the end of the sprint we get to a point where none of the 10 features are actually working. It's better for us to be working on maybe 5 features and they are working, than 10 features that are not working at all. Next, focus is on so what does the product owner do? His responsibility is to write user stories, accept the deliverables. So after writing the stories, the development team is going to be picking this up, and the product owner has to go through the acceptance criteria and find out if the development team has met those acceptance criteria or not. If in some cases they have not, then he may in fact reject those user stories. So a PO spend roughly around 20 hours per week on the backlog refinement, right? By that what we mean is primarily that we keep looking at opportunities of ensuring the backlog is done right. Second role we will talk about is the Scrum Master. Scrum Master's responsibility is to facilitate, is to ensure that you're able to remove the blockers. You're fixing any blocker which the team is having, the development team primarily may be having. The task of a Scrum Master is coaching the team, making them understand what are their responsibilities. His responsibility is to run those ceremonies, and so ceremonies could be like a daily stand-up meeting, let's say, if it is. So in that case, ensuring that all the team members are available during that time, and they're sharing the status. They should know how it is supposed to be done. So From a data standpoint, it has been found that with the Scrum Master's intervention, the delays have been cut by as much as like 40%, which is a significant number. Next, we have the third team, which is the development team. This is a cross-functional team. It could have the coders, testers, designers. They are the people who are actually executing your product. So task that they have is self-assigning the work. So there is no one who's supposed to be assigning the work to them, but rather it needs to be self-assigned. They need to be picking the task based on what they think they can work on immediately, like they can do it exceptionally. Um, and based on data, we see that teams of an average of like 5 to 7, they're able to work on up to like 28 story points. This can vary from team to team. It can also vary from sprint to sprint as well. So part of the Scrum framework, we have these three roles which we discussed. Just reiterating, product owner is responsible for defining the vision, prioritizing the features, managing the backlog. Scrum Master is responsible for facilitating the Scrum process, removing any kind of impediment which the development team might be facing, and ensuring that all the ceremonies are being executed, and encouraging collaboration. Development teams' responsibilities, they are basically a self-organizing team. They need to be developing the product and developing it incrementally, and there should be a good collaboration going on. Right. Few more things that we can look from a standpoint of agile teams and responsibilities. The agile team basically they're comprising of the dev team, testing team, and thus. So direct ownership of their task, self-management, planning, executing a sprint, deliver based on the agreed acceptance criteria. Product owner is giving those criteria. So product owner's responsibility is to communicate with the stakeholders, creating a vision, roadmap, mapping the customer journey, like the user journey map, understanding what that is, and trying to map accordingly the customer journey when you are actually building the product. Planning the sprints, and the product iteration releases, making decisions of and setting the goals for the future sprint as well. So prioritization primarily lies with the product owner. Scrum Master, on the other hand, is primarily the coach. He's coaching the agile team. He's facilitating the meetings. He's keeping the sprints moving at all times. He's keeping the team members on task. He's ensuring that we are able to get the necessary feedback, and we are becoming a better, and we are able to ensure that with retrospectively we're able to improve our velocity. As part of the framework, events are like, sprints could be between 2 to 4 weeks. Sprint planning activity could happen, which is the first activity that actually happens between 4 to 8. It might take between 4 to 8 hours. Daily Scrum, which happens where all the team members are there, which should happen maximum for 15 minutes. Then there is a sprint review, which happens after the completion of the sprint. So this could be going on for like 2 to 4 hours. And sprint retrospective, and or rather, during the sprint review, we have the product owner who's part of the demo, and he is informed about what has been done so far. Then there is a sprint retrospective. During the sprint retrospective, we try understanding as a team what's working for us, what's not working, and what can be improved. So retrospectively, everybody gets involved, and we improve on the activity. Next is the artifacts. As part of the Scrum framework, so we have a product backlog which is created by the product owner. It has all the stories that has been created, but it has to be prioritized. Next is the sprint backlog. So all from the prioritized product backlog, first set of the user stories are picked up and they're added to the sprint backlog. Second, we look at the increments, look at usable output, like the actual working software. Right. And when the user stories are actually built, they're built based on concept like invest. And the user story should be independent, negotiable, valuable, estimable, and small and testable. It should not be too big as well. It may take like 3 days to 4 days to, or maybe 5 days to make. It has to be as small as possible. Something which could take maybe 4 hours, maybe one day, 2 days, 3 days, but should not take more than 3 days. Estimation techniques which we can use is like blind poker, t-shirt sizing, Fibonacci sequence, absolute estimation, and dealing with the technical depth. So in cases where if we are not building the code correctly, we will need to allocate time for the technical depth, primarily refactoring the code, recognizing them, and then planning accordingly on those. Moving to the next framework, which is the Kanban. Kanban load board primarily looks like this. So this doesn't have the time boxing element like what is there in the Scrum. So it has a visual element to it where we have a prioritized backlog, and from this we pick up what needs to be done. So that's added to the to-do list, which needs to be done, and from this to-do list, the team picks up the stories from the to-do list, and it's added to the in progress. And if the use story is complete, it's pushed to testing, and testing team is picking up, checking if it based on the acceptance criteria, and then it is moved to the done. All right. Next, we just look at a process of Kanban. So you're going to visualize. Basically, it's a visual representation of the whole workflow. You have to set a limit with respect to the number of tasks that can be done, like say for a week or two. You have a limited number of resources. You cannot be accepting a whole lot of stories. So you want to understand what is the maximum stories that we can actually work at the same time. So identify those and accordingly plan. You want to manage the flow. So you want to monitor for any kind of a bottleneck that might be happening. You want to look at ensuring that you're communicating this effectively. There needs to be good proper feedback loops in place so that you're able to do the regular reviews, take these feedback sessions, and then go back and improve the product backlog, and most importantly, collaborate and evolve. So as part of the Kanban framework, we look at visualizing the workflow with fixed iterations, focusing on limiting the work in progress. We look at Kanban board, like the ones that we saw. That could be like 10 tasks which might be there in the to-do. But since we have maybe like 3 engineers, so we may actually only be able to pick up only 3 stories at a time. And in the done, based on this velocity of the work that is actually happening, we may have pushed like 5 tasks at this point of time. So the WIP limits primarily talks of the caps that we're applying on the task. If we have like maybe 2 or maybe 3 engineers, we may just be running with 3 items which might be running in progress, or 3 user stories which are in progress. There's no defined set limit for the cycle time, so it could be maybe 5 days. It could be from to do to done. We've gone through the workflow primarily, right? So with respect to design, code, test, deploy, you are setting, as part of the process, you're setting those limits of WIP. You are pulling the task from the to do, and then you are moving it to in progress, considering what is the capacity we have. Maybe 2 tasks which are running in a day, or maybe 3 tasks which are actually running in a day, and you want to effectively keep optimizing this. Next, we will talk about the extreme programming. So as part of the extreme programming, we want to ensure that we are building software of quality, but frequent releases. So when you're talking about these frequent releases, so this could be as early as a week. So the difference between Scrum and XP is a focus on the speed front, where in Scrum we may look at between 2 to 4 weeks. In XP we'll look at delivery every week. The team organization is also a little different, where we have roles like a driver and someone who is actually navigating. So driver is someone who is actually doing the coding, and navigator is someone who is directing to the director that this is where you need to be making the change, what changes needs to be made, and where the changes needs to be made. In extreme programming, the test codes are written ahead of writing actually the code, right? So there is focus on the refactoring as well. Significant considerations are actually given to CI/CD as well, because there is a need for automated builds, automated testing, fast feedback loops, version control, trunk-based development. So what happens here is, from a data standpoint, if you look at XT team reduces bugs from 20 to 8 per release over 6 months. Right. Next, we look at lean. Lean focuses on eliminating the waste to maximize the value. So principles of the lean are, you want to eliminate the waste, amplify the learning, decide as late as possible, deliver as fast as possible, empower the team. Focus is here is of improving the efficiency and reducing unnecessary work. So, what are the principles? The principles are of value, flow, pull. Value, you don't want to define what the customers really want. So you are prioritizing based on their needs. Flow, you want to streamline the steps. We don't want we should not be building too many steps, but rather the least number of steps in order to build a product. Next, build on demand. So if it is there are some units that need to be bought, we will pre-order them and accordingly buy the product. So continuing with the lean, so we look at the value stream mapping, a technique which is used for value visualizing the flow of value from the customer's request to the delivery of the product. There are the principles like Muda, Muri, Mura, the three M's of waste. Intent here is of Muda is the activities that consume resources but do not add value. Then Muri is pushing people or equipment beyond their limits. So there is no sustainable way of actually developing. Third is inconsistency in the flow of work. Right. Then A3, there is another thing, concept called A3 thinking, where a structured problem solving approach that uses a single A3 size sheet of paper to document the problems, analysis, countermeasures, and implementation plan. So a simple way of doing the performing the problem solving. Next, we will talk about and the enterprise Scrum, this SAFe we're talking about. So it is called a scaled agile framework, where we have all stakeholders there could be subject matter experts, there could be business owner, there could be other stakeholders who are there. There's going to be a big portfolio strategy. This portfolio strategy will have portfolio backlog. Similar to a product backlog, we have here a product portfolio backlog, which will comprise of product backlogs. There will be multiple epics running parallelly, and multiple epics would have multiple teams working on them parallelly. So there can be 2, 3, 4, 5 maybe different scrum teams which might be working simultaneously or at the same time in order to build one big bundle of product. Right. So the essence is here, at the epic level, each and every team is has identified a particular epic, and each team is working on only one particular epic, a unique epic, and for that epic they are creating the stories, and the team is working on them effectively. Next, from a standpoint of SAFe, we can look at it's for large enterprises which need to scale agile across multiple teams. So though Scrum can be a great effective process for smaller teams, but when we have a large enterprise teams, managing them might be difficult. But so that's where the SAFI comes into picture. The components that we use here is like a lean portfolio management. We have agile release trains are there, which focus on ensuring that all the Scrum teams finally they're coming together and they are integrating it and effectively and releasing the product. The benefits of SAFI are it helps the organization deliver a high quality product faster, improve collaboration and aligning across the teams. It provides a structured approach for scaling agile, helps organizations manage projects with more agility. It helps organizations respond to changing market conditions. Right. Now we will talk about the agile process. We'll look at it from a step by step manner how we finally get to a point where we're able to build an effective product in a most effective manner and in fact least amount of time. So it starts with the vision and the backlog. Next is we do a sprint planning. After the planning is done, the development team will start working on it. And when the development team has done a work for at least for a sprint, then the team, the stakeholders are involved or product owner is involved who will review the sprint work. And after the sprint review, we have the sprint retrospective. This is for the internal team, and internal team will learn what's working for them, what's not working for them, and what can be improved, and then we continue repeating this cycle. All right, so we move to the next one. So we start with the vision and the backlog creation. So we have here defining the vision. Example, it could be like a budget app for 18 to 30-year-old. Next, gathering requirements via interviews. So these are some of the precursors that have to be done before we are building the product backlog. So we are gathering the requirement via the interviews. We have understood what are the pain points, what are the needs of the customer. Based on that, the user stories are being written by the product owner. A user story could look like as a student, I want to categorize the expenses so I can control the spending. So this could be a sample user story you could consider. And based on this, you want to prioritize the backlog. So the prioritization would mean what's the order in which we like to build our build our product. So we definitely need, let's say if there is an app, we need a sign up, we need a login, and after login we need maybe a dashboard after the login, and on that dashboard maybe some basic activity has to be done. And then if there's a need for a payment, we do the payment. If there is none, then we will say okay, we have pretty much done over here. Second is the sprint planning. As part of the sprint planning, we try to understand what is we start with the capacity planning. We'll try to learn how many number of resources we have, how many are available for the week, and based on that, we do a calculation of 40 hours per week. And let's say we have 5 team members, we multiply it, learn how many hours do we have per week. Next, we select the items. Let's say we are picking maybe 5 stories or maybe 10 stories, and for those stories we are doing estimation like planning poker, t-shirt sizing. Based on we learn how long it will take for us to build the product. We also want to break down the user stories. If the user stories are too big, we want to break it down further. Or if in case there are tasks have not been identified, we would want to identify the tasks. So there's a possibility that for a user story to be done, there can be multiple tasks that might be involved, like a UI design work, or there could be a code the backend work altogether. And with that, we are able to define a sprint goal. So for every particular sprint that we work on, it's important to define this is the goal that we would want to achieve by the end of the sprint. This complete bundle of features we should have been in a position to build. Right. Number three, development and the daily scrum. So the development team, they are self-assigning the task to themselves. They work iteratively. They hold daily scrum meetings during which they try to convey to the scrum master and others with respect to what they have done yesterday, what they are going to do, if they have any kind of impediment, like uh, if there are no blockers, they are basically working in a most effective manner. Sprint review. So as part of the sprint review, we want to get the review done with with the stakeholders, with the product owners, learn what is working, what is not working, get their feedback as early as possible, and then accordingly update the backlog. All right. The next is the sprint retrospective. As part of the sprint retrospective, now we want to learn how effective we are as a team. So if is the dev team effective? Is it effective enough? If the Is the product owner giving the right set of user stories? Is he giving enough in details in the user story? So all that is discussed as part of the sprint retrospective, and accordingly there are actionable steps which are taken following this sprint retrospective. We want to identify the issues early. We want to propose actions, assign the owners. By doing the sprint retrospective, it has been found that the velocity of the team increases by 10%, which is huge. Right. And finally, you want to keep repeating this. So for the first time, you may have released the MVP, and after that, you continuously keep repeating this. Okay. What are the tools for Agile? So features like backlog management, sprint planning, burn down chart. These are few features given as part of the Jira. You can track the task, track the sprints. By making use of Jira, we're able to cut down the planning by 50%. In fact, we can make you build a product roadmap using the features available in the Jira, and effectively we are able to communicate with the stakeholders, convey to them using the current data. Second is the Trello. The features are like Kanban boards, task cards, and the due date. Usages. So from a usage standpoint, that can be like 20 tasks which will be there for like 5 people. It's a free tier, so it's basically available for everyone. Asana is there. Asana is more from a standpoint of task dependency, trend lines, workload views. I can assign 50 tasks across 10 users here. Okay. Other tools as part of the Agile is Slack. It's a great collaboration tool which can be used from a standpoint of channels. There can be integration with Jira itself. Usage of it, there can be like 200 messages which can be sent per day for a 7-member team. And from a standpoint of GitHub, we have like it is used for code commits, with respect to pull requests, CI/CD, other things. Next, we look at the benefits of Agile. You can deliver the product in like 2 to 4 weeks. It gives us a lot of flexibility in accepting the changes. Customer satisfaction goes up. Team productivity, just because of the calibration, the ROI is much better. Cost effectiveness is there. It leads to reducing our wastage, not working on unnecessary task. Some of the best practices: prioritize user stories based on the business value, responsibility of, let's say, product owner, encouraging the cross-functional collaboration, emphasize continuous integration and automated testing, adapt to change rather than resist it, and then use retrospectively to improve process continuously. Next, we can talk about challenges and mitigation. Challenges are scope creep, resistance to change, minimal documentation. So these are actually the challenges of Agile. Next is Agile in practice. We'll go through a basic common case study. So we want to develop a grocery app. So that's a scenario. So for that, there needs to be a vision. So vision is you want to save users time and money on groceries. We'll have a small team, like maybe a 7-member team. There could be like one product owner, one scrum master, two coders, two testers. Then backlog. From a backlog, there can be like 40 items which might be sitting in a product backlog. This can be further picked up and added into your sprint backlog. As part of the sprints, you may have like you may want to be building your MVP for the very first time itself. So you look at the prioritized backlog and logically define, okay, this is a sprint backlog, sprint goal that we want to achieve, and for that sprint goal, these are the sort of features that would be needed. And sprint 2, price comparison. You do your story point consumption goes up. In sprint 3, you can see budget tracker is now 22 points. And then sprint 4, we basically polish the UI before the launch. All right, and the tools that we will use for this is like Jira, Slack, and the GitHub. The metrics that we will use is velocity. So when we're actually starting off, we have like a 21 story point velocity, and that can ideally go up based on a effective way of managing this. If you compare Agile and the waterfall, so Agile focuses on incremental delivery, whereas the waterfall is focusing on final delivery. Agile focuses on flexible planning, and waterfall focuses on fixed planning. Agile focuses on iterative structure, and waterfall approaches the linear structure. Okay. Now we will focus on the Agile metrics and KPIs. Some of the major metrics that we use as part of the Agile metrics are velocity. It's a measure of the work which is done by the Agile team, the combined team in one sprint. And then there is the lead time. It's the time taken from the request to delivery. Okay. Then there is the cycle time. It's the time taken from the development team to completion. Next is the burn down chart. It tracks the work over a period of time. So let's say that based on our capacity, we have 100 hours allocated for the week. So after day one, if we have like 5 engineers, then what we would like to do is 100 minus the number of engineers. Let's say it is 5, and for 8 hours they are working on it. So 100 minus 40. So we are left with 60 hours after that day. Then there is cumulative flow diagram, so visual representation of workflow. So doing further deep dive into velocity. So velocity is a good guidance. It's not a target, but it's a guidance. So as part of this velocity, we want to basically understand how our team is completing the user story, how fast they are actually completing these user stories in a particular sprint. The goal here is primarily to learn the team's capacity and identify any trends which are actually going on. Additionally, we also want to sum up all the story points to find out what is the velocity for that particular sprint. Then there is something called as throughput metrics. So it measures the number of work items. So you may have user stories, you may have technical debts, bugs that might be there. So we are counting all the work items, and then we inform that, okay, this is the total number of throughput for that particular week, or for that particular sprint. Then lead time and the cycle time metrics. So So throughout the measure of the number of work items, like user stories, features, bug fixes completed per unit of time. Okay. And the intent here is you want to measure the team's output and defining kind of a bottleneck might be there. You want to count the number of work items which have been completed within a specified time period. this this is really effective because this sort of gives you an idea with respect to how long we are actually taking to building our stories from the time we are starting to the final output. The second is the sprint burn down we have spoken of. So imagine that you have like in example over here is like 100 hours. For those 100 hours there will be an ideal timeline which a tool maybe like a Jira would actually build based on your number of users. So if we go under the guideline value, then we are ahead of schedule, and if we go above the time guideline value, then we are behind the schedule. So it's always good that we stay under the timeline by which we are able to ensure that we are building the code effectively and on time. Next is the cumulative flow diagram. This is basically comprises of the cycle time, work in progress, and the throughput. The next is the burn up chart. It's the opposite of the burn down chart. Over here, it's a visual tool which is used to learn how much work has actually been done and how much work is pending. Okay. All right. So with that, we'll end it. I hope you would have enjoyed the session. Thank you very much.